morning again, my friend. This is Sandi Boucher here with today's entry from Honorary Indian. Now, I'm going to assume that you know that Honorary Indian was my very first book. And why I mention that is because the book is so incredibly authentic. When I wrote it was a large part of my healing after I lost my mom. I really put no limits on what I was sharing. It was straight from my heart to yours. And I truly believe that's why it became a bestseller, because the words resonated with people. Authenticity always does. Now, I'm sharing that this morning because this morning's reading is actually a little bit longer. It is also one of the most personal and authentic readings in the book. The May 31st entry is called The Spirit That Took My Mom Home. And if you are spiritual in any way, shape, or form, I think this one's going to resonate with you. So here goes. And by the way, forgive me if I trip over a word or two. Like I said, this one straight from the heart. Last week, I had the opportunity to discuss with a coworker what constitutes being Indian. She retold a discussion she had previously with another coworker and used the phrase cosmetic Indian. She went on to explain that to the person she had spoken with, the term described someone who followed the powwow trail, someone who danced, but who did not live the life in any other way. She went on to share that to her, she had what could be termed a traditional upbringing, in that she was raised living off the land, with no running water, with none of the creature comforts we take for granted, and therefore she was Indian. I thought of our discussion as I hit the highway to travel home, and I surmised that to me, being Indian was more a way of thinking, of living, rather than a description of what possessions we did and didn't have. It was a life of dreams, visions, and interpretations, learning from the lessons of each day, of each encounter, and interpreting those lessons to the point of reconciling them in our mind. Tonight I was reminded that these visions and dreams do not come when we expect them, but rather when the Creator knows we are ready to receive them. Case in point. I had a conversation with my son this evening. Our teachings tell us that when we quiet ourselves, when we eliminate outside thoughts and disturbances, we are open to see the lessons of spirit world. Now, anyone who knows me knows being quiet is not one of my strong suits, but for my son, it is. He has always been a master of being quiet in the middle of chaos, and as a result, has always possessed an insight far beyond his years. Tonight, my son excitedly told me he was making plans to get his second tattoo. He has a large one on his bicep, a huge spider, and to hear him tell the interpretation, you discover that the legs of the spider represent the paths we can choose to walk. If you look closely, you see that one of the legs is broken, representing a path that leads to hardship and heartache. The legs of the spider hold the yin-yang symbol, and in the body of the spider is an hourglass, representing our time on this plane. He sent me the picture of his planned tattoo. When I opened it, I stared into the huge head of a great blue wolf, its eyes empty, yellow, and glowing. Around the neck of the wolf is a ring of feathers with beads and bones hanging towards its chest. He asked me if he had shared with me what happened to him the morning my mother died, and as I answered in the negative, I sat back, waiting for what I was certain would be a profound tale. I was not disappointed. "I have to tell you something, Mom," he stated. and something inside me told me this was important. My son was not superficial. He was quiet by most standards, but in the style of the elders when he spoke, it was always worth listening to. He reminded me of the day I will never forget. Mom's surgery had taken place, and she was now in recovery, although she didn't seem to be recovering at all. Hamilton was a short hour drive, so each day I drove out to spend the day at her side, keeping my elder brother company as we reminisced and prayed for her recovery. Each night I went home to my family, only to awake the next morning to repeat the process. Each day began with a phone call to the hospital to see how Mom was doing. And on that day, I heard the words I didn't want to hear. "She's not doing well, Sandy. She had a real rough night. I think you better get here." I don't know the nurse's name, but like all of the nursing staff at Hamilton General who tended to my mom, she had a heart of gold, and I realized I had to get there fast. Now, I wasn't originally going to the hospital that day, as I had a dentist appointment. I had informed my brother of my plans, and since we thought her recovery would definitely take a while, it seemed to be no big deal. I knew otherwise now. As I hung up the phone, I turned to my partner. He had heard, and he just nodded and informed me he was going with me. God bless his soul. Ken had lost his parents, and although he knew I couldn't have bared for him to tell me I was losing my mom, he knew, and he was there for me. Then I called my son into the room and told him he wasn't going to school that day, that today would be the last chance he had to see his grandma, and that he should come with me. And he agreed. When we got to the hospital, we met my brother in the waiting room. He was surprised to see me, as I wasn't supposed to be there. So I quickly told him what the nurse had told me. He was confused, as the doctor had told him Mom was fine. We raced upstairs to gain some clarity, while Ken and my son took a seat in the waiting room. Now my son's story began. He knew we were losing Mom. He knew this day was different, and in his usual way, he sat and waited. Ken fell asleep in his chair, so Keith was left to survey his surroundings. He looked at the view outside, the people in the waiting room, and then down the hallway where he had watched my brother and I disappear. And that's when he saw him. The wolf was massive, mature, and beautiful. Slowly, he walked into the corridor towards my son, slowly, taking the time to peer into each door along the way, searching. And then the wolf came to the hallway where my brother and I had just gone down, the one leading to the elevators and the rooms upstairs. And the wolf disappeared in the same direction. The wolf disappeared, and my brother and I re-entered the hallway, returning to inform my son, my partner, and other family who had gathered that Mom was gone. After a few moments, I asked my son if he wanted to go upstairs and say goodbye to his grandma. When he nodded, my brother offered to take him upstairs, and they left. My son described what he saw as he entered my mom's room. The nurses had removed the horrible apparatus that had maintained Mom's existence for the last few days. He simply saw my mom laying peacefully in her bed and the wolf at her feet. He was curled up at the end of her bed, peaceful, waiting. Keith knew his grandma was safe, and he knew without a doubt this beautiful, strong spirit was here to take her home. As he told his story, I felt the tears fall from my eyes. So often I had feared what the end had been like for her. Was she scared? Did she feel alone? As he told his story, I felt the peace encompass me. She had not been alone. I thanked him for sharing and pointed out what I knew he already understood, that only such an amazing, powerful, and wonderful woman would deserve such an escort an animal of such strength and such beauty. He nodded in agreement, and we both silently cried. After our phone call ended, I looked at this picture he had sent me and cried. Cried from the soul. Cried for all the times I wondered if she had been scared, if she had been lonely at the end. At first I felt the anger as I named the picture the spirit that took my mom away. And then as the tears began to subside, I renamed it the spirit that took Mom home. No, the life of an Indian isn't easy. Our visions, our dreams are often heart-wrenching to the point that we wonder if we're strong enough to endure them. But we are. The Creator only sends these gifts when we are ready to remind us of our strength and to show us just how far we have come. So now I say Chi-miigwech to the great blue wolf. Thank you for escorting Mom home. Thank you for making sure she is comfortable and safe. And thank you, Creator, for the wonderful gift that is my son. He is a blessing in every sense of the word. So there you have it, my friend, and I apologize for the words I tripped over and the tears I swallowed. Like I said, it doesn't get much more authentic than that. I love you. Talk to you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.